for doing the presentation. Normally, the presentation would take between 20-25 minutes, and then there is a Q&A, which can be about the topic we just discussed, or I just presented, or you can also ask any other questions that you might have about finance and administration. All right, so there are two of us. Michael, that's me, that is going to do the presentation. And Yostra is my colleague, who is also going to manage all the questions that you might put in the chat. Or I also invite you, we have this call every 2 weeks, and we always ask the previous attendees the topics that they would like us to discuss in the next session, which would be in 2 weeks. So if you have any ideas of a topic that you think would be interesting for you, but also for the other participants, you can suggest that in the chat, and we will see which one is the most popular for next time. So Yosra is going to take care of the chat. I also suggest that during the presentation, you just mute yourself. As I said, if you have questions, you can just send it to Yosra, and then when we will start the Q&A, Yosra will just summarize all the questions that you already provided. A bit of background about what we do in Masterfile. We help non-for-profits based in Brussels that has an international focus, and we help them in finance and administration, which can be quite broad. For example, today, what we are discussing is mainly HR with a bit of accounting. So this is typically what we do. We cover for especially finance manager or finance officer that goes on leave, for example, maternity leave, parental leave, long-term sick leave. We just cover for finance managers. Sorry, too fast. We also do finance management for very small NGOs that don't have enough money or don't really need a full-time finance manager. So we act as finance manager for those NGOs. And in those cases, we just work continuously for those, so on a year-long basis. And then if those first situations are not taking us all of our time, we also take specific requests. For example, linked with situations where you have to deal with a specific grant, and you don't have the capacity internally to deal with the reporting or the audit of the grant, or prepare the budget for the application for the grant. We do a lot of this. We also do training and capacity building for people that end up doing finance that don't really have the background in finance, or people that end up having to manage a European Commission project for the grant for the first time. So we do a lot. We do the training for those people. That's a few organizations for which we either worked in the past or we are still working with. All right. So, as I said, the presentation today is about HR and accounting aspects for holiday pay. It's quite a complex topic in Belgium. They made it very complicated in the first place, and since a lot of this in the past few years has been kind of standardized at the European level, they made it even more complicated to comply with EU legislation or regulations. There are two holiday pays, or what we call holiday pays is actually two different things. You have the single holiday pay, or what is called here the simple holiday pay, which is just a reflection that every year, assuming you respect a few conditions, you are entitled to 20 days off for a full-time whole year situation. So those 20 days off that you are taking is part of the single holiday pay. And then there is a double holiday pay in Belgium, which is actually a payout. So it's not a reflection of days off that you need to take. It's just a payout and sorry, cool. And it's a representation of, again, 20 days off, the equivalent in terms of salary of 20 days off. Again, assuming you are full-time and you have worked the whole year. So you have the single holiday pay, which is 20 days off that you can take during the year that are paid. You also have unpaid days off, but this is not part of this presentation. And then you have the double holiday pay, which is actually compulsory for anyone in Belgium, unless you have stuff that is on internship contracts, but it's very peculiar. If it's an employee, double holiday pay is compulsory in Belgium. Okay, this is for me, especially if you have never been introduced to the concept. This is usually the most difficult part to understand, and also the part that is very specific to Belgium. You won't see that anywhere else in Europe, I think, or maybe one or two countries might be doing this as well. When you start working, and I'm going to take an example here, I'm going to take here. To show you an example, I'm going to use an Excel table. We're going to take an example of somebody that starts working in September. So 9 years, I'm going to put it a bit bigger for you all to see. Right, so we're going to take the example of somebody that is start in year Y. And then continue in year 2. So I'm just going to. 9, 10, 11, 12, yeah. So this is Y plus 1, year Y plus 1. If the person starts in September, the principle is that on the first fiscal year, so September, October, November, December, of the first year that person work in Belgium, he is not going to get any days off. So that's the legal rule in Belgium. But from September, it's going to start accruing days off for next year. So it's a concept. I'm just going to introduce a concept of accrual. The concept of accrual in accounting is a situation where you reflect the debt that you have towards other people. So if somebody starts in September, he starts accumulating accrual, so number of days off that he cannot take on that specific year, but will have to take in the next year. So every month, so you see the formula here, 20 days off divided by 12 months. Every full month that this person is going to work is going to accumulate this accrued number of days off. Yeah. But in reality, those days off, so in real situation, is not going to take any days off on the first year because he cannot do it. So those are accrued on the first year, and then this person can then take the total of those days off for the year. So I'm just gonna sum this up. Between 6 and 7 days, this person can take on the second year. So the total of the number of days that this person will be able to take on the second year is 6.6.6. But, so here, the maximum he can actually take in reality is this number, right? But then in the second year, he is continuing accruing number of days off. But it's not for that year, it's for the next year. It's for year +2. Okay? So in actual terms, the first year you work in Belgium, you don't have legal days off. You can have extra legal days off, but it's outside the topic for today. And the number of days that you can take on your second year is a reflection of how long you actually worked on the first year. And the number of days you can take on the year after that is again a reflection of the number of months or number of days you've worked in the year before. Okay. So that's the concept. If you understand this, you understand the main part about holiday pay in Belgium. So just to sum it up, you start accruing holiday pay on your first day of work. So you can see here, from the moment it starts in September, we start accruing days off, yeah? But you can only take those days or receive a double holiday pay. So I'm gonna explain in a second the double holiday pay. In FY +1, so fiscal year +1. So the 6 to 7 days off that you manage to accrue in your first year, you can then use them in the second year. So again, for your first year, you should not have days off or receive your double holiday pay. So you shouldn't expect having days off or double holiday pay on your first year. But you can take those accrued days off or double holiday pay in year +1. Now I'm just going to explain. So this is the single or simple holiday pay, and then the double holiday pay. The double holiday pay is, I will explain it later, but it's paid in May or June. Actually, it's more, let's say, no. Those 2 months, so May and June, is when usually you get your double holiday pay. And again here, as explained in the presentation, the amount you're going to receive is a direct reflection of the fact that you only worked 4 months last year. So what you get here in May or June, I mean, it's always better to get it in May, but sometimes the employer decides to give it in June. Is a direct reflection of the fact that you have worked 4 days in the year before. Yeah. There is an exception to this, which is one of the exception that the Belgian authorities had to allow because of EU law, like a few years ago, which is called the European. Actually, there is a mistake here. European vacation, or vacances européennes in French. It's a whole concept, and it would take like half an hour to explain this. So, I mean, if people are interested in vacances européennes, which I could understand, I mean, that you would want to give days off on the first year when people start working for you. I mean, people kind of expect, especially if they are not from Belgium, they kind of expect to have days off on their first year. So if this is a topic of interest, we can give a session specific to this. But it's so specific that I think it would require a different discussion altogether. What I want to explain next is how you deal with situations where you change you're an employee and you change employers during the year. You will probably be in a situation where you didn't use up. So I come back to my example in the Excel, for example. Let's say that in March, you decide to leave your current employer and go for another one. You might not have used the between 6 and 7 days between January to March. In this situation, there is a transfer of holiday pay between your current employer and your next employer. But because there is no direct, your new employer doesn't have to know your previous employer, and your previous employer doesn't have to know where you are going. There is no actual exchange of money or information between the two directly. It goes through you. So if people has had experience in leaving a Belgian employer in the past, you probably noticed that when you left, you received what we call leaving papers. And together with those leaving papers, you receive an extra amount of money on your payslip. So for example, if the person is leaving end of March for his next employer, the number of days this person has not taken, you will be paid out those days because there is no transfer between employers. It goes through you. So that's why you get usually definitely a higher amount when you're leaving an employer. Okay. And this goes through a document that is called holiday certificate. So when you leave your employer, you need to make sure, your first employer, you need to make sure that you get that certificate, because this is what will help you together with your employer to decide how many days off you can take in your new job. So how many days are transferred from one employer to the next? It's called the holiday certificate. And this document, it's one of the aspects that if you are, for example, HR in an organization, you have to make it sure that, of course, staff understand what's going on here. That there is a lot of situation that I've seen in the past where people are getting this sort of bonus, quote unquote, when they leave their previous organization, but their previous employer has not explained that this is an advance on days off that you will have to take later on during the year. I'm assuming here that you are leaving an employer to go to another employer in Belgium. So it's very important to be clear with the staff about how this is going to work, right? That they don't just use up that money that they just received while leaving their previous employer, and kind of expect that they will have no impact on the number of days off that they can take, or no impact on the next double holiday pay that they're going to receive. Because of course, there is no free money. If you receive it from your previous employer, this is something that your next employer is not going to give you because you have already received it. And this is not always explained properly to employees. It's all about expectation, right? So here you have, this is also a legal requirement, by the way. You have to explain what will be the process in terms of compensating those the amount that they have received with their leaving papers. Yeah. Okay, there are two new rules for 2024. that makes the situation even more complicated than it was, but okay. So this is one of those two new rules for 2024. So what I just explained, the employer received a payout for the days off that they didn't take, right? They move to their next employer, and their next employer with the holiday certificate can then tell the payroll provider or the Secrétariat Social the number of days off this staff is still entitled for the current year. Yeah? But because they have already been paid out when they left their previous employer, they are entitled to take those days off. They are not entitled to get a payout or being paid for those days off because they have already been paid those days off. So this is again something that we need to explain to people, because when they receive the pay slips, they have taken, for example, two days off, and they will realize that those days off has not been fully paid. So that's the new rule. Yeah, that the employer is supposed to take or deduct 90% of the gross daily wage for each vacation day. So the employee is only going to get paid 10%, and this is a deduction that goes against the amount that they have received when they left their previous employer. Yeah? And then, so this is the phase one. This is when people are taking their days off. And then in phase two, in December, there will also be a correction based on what is left of the leaving papers that they have received the previous with their previous employer. Yeah? So if there is a correction, it will be done in December at the end of the year. Yeah? Or if they leave their employer, then it's when they leave the employer. And then normally, if you do this and they take all their days off, the maximum that can be taken out of the December salary is 20%. Yeah. If there is a final correction on the holiday pay, it will be in December, and it will be a maximum of 20%. But the only way this works is that people need to take their days off. They can't just transfer them. So this is key when people are coming in and they have a lot of days off to get rid of until the end of the year. You have to make sure that they do it so that you manage this limitation of 20%. So this this was not policy in previous years. Yeah. But I think this is actually an improvement, even though it's more complex. It's an improvement because in the past, so the people were paid fully for each holiday that they were taken, and then there was a correction that was made in May when the double holiday pay is paid. And people were complaining that the correction were basically were canceling the double holiday pay. And we had to explain to them that you are not getting a double, the extra money in May, because you got it when you left your previous employer. Yeah? So now they have formalized this. So we cannot do this anymore the way we used to do it. Now you just take out the money when people are taking their days off. Another thing that is new in terms of holiday pay in Belgium, it was about the situation where people were not taking all their days off by the end of the year. And you have a lot of those situations in non-for-profits in Brussels in general. People tend to forget that they have days off, or they work, they have a lot of they work on Saturdays and Sundays, and they have to recuperate, and then the recuperation days. You have so many recuperation days that you cannot get rid of your 20 days off, for example, at the end of the year. And in the past, if you wanted to respect the Belgian legislation, what you needed to do is to put people on leave. So for example, let's say that they had like 10 more days off to take it by the end of the year. You had to decide at the beginning of December when you wanted to put those people on leave. So you had to force them to take their days off. There were some kind of leeway where you could potentially postpone this to January or February, but I don't advise it because it's just postponing the problem to later on. The new rule is actually again a situation where the Belgian legislation was contradicting EU law. There were situations where you could, the example that I just explained, where you could put people on days off in December, is obviously not possible if the person in December is sick. You just don't have enough days until the end of the year. It's just not possible for you to even if you wanted to put that person on leave by the end of the year, right? So a situation like the fact that you have an accident at work, you have the different options here. Occasional disease, accidents and illness, parental leave, converted maternity leave, all sorts of leaves that if you take them, of course, then you can't be on days off at the same time. Yeah. So the new rule is that for those situations when, let's assume, for example, that at the end of the year, somebody goes on maternity leave and they have not used all their days off, and the maternity leave doesn't finish by the end of the year, but just continue to the next year, then you can use this situation. You can postpone, you can transfer the days off that this person has not taken during the year to next year, or even 2 years in the future. So you see here 24 months. So let's take another example. So in this case, an employee has 7 days of holidays left on the 1st of December 2024 and wishes to take them around Christmas. The employee falls ill from the 16th to the 31st of December 2024 and cannot take those days in 2024. These 7 days can still be taken until end of 31st of December 2024. Before, those days were lost in this situation. So and that's the reason it was against the EU law. You cannot just lose your days off just because you couldn't take them because you were on sick leave, for example. So this is disappearing. So and you have 24 months or 2 years to get rid of those days. In terms of practicality, my advice to HR managers is to manage the different days off and making sure that the oldest days off are being used first. Yeah, so that you don't have a situation where because it's going to be quite difficult to manage. A situation where people can just use, especially if the staff has their can go online and decide their days off and decide which days off they can take first. I would actually advise against this, or at least explain to them that they need to get rid of their oldest days off first. So you can kind of manage this situation, yeah. Just a reminder of what is happening when somebody is on days off and become ill, sorry, they don't have to stay on days off. They can just be on sick leave, yeah? So, but to be able to be on sick leave and keep those days off for later, they have to go through the normal process of, getting a medical certificate, declaring that they are on sick leave, and getting paid this way, yeah? As you would be paid as if you were on sick leave, yeah. Okay, so that's all for HR mainly. In terms of some aspects that are more linked to the accounting of holiday pay. As I explained earlier, we start accruing on the first day when somebody is working, which means that we need to show in the accounting that there is a debt that the organization has towards the staff, right? The days off that they need to take next year, and the double holiday pay that they need to receive next year. And this can be calculated with what we call the 18.20% rule, which is you can just calculate this based on the gross salary of the real monthly gross salary of the person. Calculate 18.20, and this covers single holiday pay plus the social security linked to it, and the double holiday pay. The double holiday pay is not subject to social security, so there is no social security to be accrued for. These past years, we had quite a few situations where the salary of people got indexed during the year, over several years, yeah. So in a situation where the holiday pay that the person is getting in May or June, there was a question of whether this was the result of the salary of the year before, or was this also indexed to reflect the fact that maybe in January you got indexation of the salary, yeah? So is the double holiday pay you received in May a reflection of the salary, the indexed salary of that period, or the one that was the salary that was applicable the previous year, on which the accrual was based? So what is happening is the double holiday pay is actually indexed. So it's a reflection of the salary, the usual salary you get in May or June of that year. Yeah? So it means that the accrual that you have made the previous year, if there is an indexation in between, is not a good reflection of what is going to be paid in May or June. Yeah? In May or June, it's going to be a bit higher than the accrual you have made the previous year. Yeah? And it is possible. All of this depends a bit on the which joint committee or commission paritaire you are under, and when exactly, what is the policy that you have to follow in terms of indexation. But for example, if you know in December what will be the indexation in January, and you as a non-for-profit are not in deficit. So what I'm suggesting is a situation where you have a small profit and you actually don't want to beef up your positive result at the end of the year. You can actually assume the indexation that you will have to pay in May and June in the accrual that you are doing at the end of the year. So you can do that. You can just assume, okay, in December, we know this is something that you can check on a monthly basis, right? When is the next indexation? What will be the percentage index, the indexation, and the percentage that will be used, and apply it to your accrual, which will reduce your positive result. So this is something that you can do, you don't have to. But I know there are some organizations that would rather try to restrict the amount of positive result that they are getting, or just wants to reflect reality, which is that they don't want to have this big this difference between the accrual that they are booking on year Y and what they will have to pay on year +1. So this is very finance related. So sorry for the people that are more into the HR zone, but it's important to understand this, that it's going to be indexed, and that you can reflect this in the accrual that you're making. Yeah, so the double holiday pay usually paid in April or May will be calculated on the indexed gross salary applicable at that time. An accrual must be booked on monthly, sorry, or at the end of the financial year. So this is also something that I just want to explain a bit. In the private sector, they tend to do the holiday pay, they book it to the end of the year. They don't want to do it on a monthly basis. The reason I strongly advise non-for-profits to book it on a monthly basis is because you often get funding that is related to specific people or specific projects. So you need to have what we call the project accounting, where you need to be able to tell how much a single person is costing, for example, or how much you're spending on a specific project. And because you need that level of detail in your reporting, and you have projects that don't always run from January to December, but projects that might run from April to March, for example. All of those reason makes it better if you book the accrual on a monthly basis. So you take the monthly gross salary, and you take 18.20% of that amount, and then you reverse that accrual when the holiday pay is paid out. So in May or April of next year, you will cancel the provision or the accrual of the previous year. Voilà. Okay, I realize this is quite technical, so I might, if something was unclear, I'm happy to explain again or take another example or something. Yosra, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, do we have questions?
Yeah, we've got 3 questions so far.
Okay.
But first, let me thank Lisa and Lire from the European Disability Forum who joined us and provided the sign language translation, interpretation. Okay, so our first question came from Lena. She said that what are the 10% calculated on the salary of the employer 1 or the new employer when changing jobs?
Okay, let's go back to the slide. We are talking about the 10% that is actually paid, right? So this is on the new salary. Yeah.
Lena,
because
does
it's
that
linked.
answer?
It's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's linked with the current salary that the person has.
Yes, I think
Okay.
makes sense. Yeah. Lina, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So sorry, just activated my mic. Thank you for that clarification. I'm just not very clear because so even before the changes in the law, I was never really clear on how it works in practice in the new employer, because so when the person is paid out with the remaining days they have, when the new employer sends the holiday certificate to the social secretariat, they then give the number of days that this person is allowed to take based on this holiday certificate.
Exactly.
But then they get paid when they do take these days, they get paid
Yes.
even though they were paid out. So it's always looked to me that they were paid twice for this number of days. And so I'm not sure to get
Okay,
what has
so
changed.
it is correct. So what you're describing is the old system, right?
Yes, exactly.
And in the old system, so people were paid out when they were leaving, and they were paid again when they were taking days off.
Yes.
But in May or June, when they were supposed to get the double holiday pay, they were not getting it, or they were getting it a lot smaller,
Yeah, it's
lower.
true.
And that difference is because of this double payment. Okay.
Okay.
So in a way, in a way, this new system simplify and complexify at the same time, right?
Yes.
So it's I think it's better it's easier to explain to the staff this new system than the old one. So this system, I mean, I don't know exactly why there is 90% and 10%. I don't really get this, but the principle that they shouldn't be paid their days off that they have already been paid by the previous employer kind of makes sense. And what they are suggesting here is to do it when they actually take their days off, and not in May and June.
Yes.
So they will be in a situation where they will not be paid, at least not fully, when they are taking their days off, but they will have this extra money in May and June. So it's not that they are losing any money, it's just that it's spread out differently.
But but now I actually have a question that comes with it. So then I'm not sure. And so those days that they are transferring from employer to the new one, when they take it, they will get paid the equivalent of 10%. So they will still be paid a little bit, the equivalent of 10%.
Yes.
Instead of a full day like it used to be, and then deducted during is that correct?
Yes. So it's the 90% that you have to put against what they have already received. Yeah.
Okay.
And if there is a difference, as I explained, it will be corrected in December. But what the Belgian legislation wants is to avoid in December having a huge take on their salary.
Yeah.
So they want to spread it over the different months, assuming that they take days off a bit, not on the same. Of course, if they take all their days off in December, then it's going to have an impact in December, right? But they want to limit the corrections that we will have to do in December. So that's why I'm advising you to make sure that people are taking their days off before December. Yeah? That they are not, postponing this until December. And then, of course, in December, they can come and complain, but it's just a reflection of if they take all their days in December, then, of course, December, if they take all their days in December and they only get 10% of their days off, then of course December is not going to be very high.
Yeah, of course. So they should spread their holidays.
As much we are assuming here that, and I know it's a bit difficult in NGO because people are not thinking of taking all their days off, especially people that are not in Belgium. Belgium gets used to this and they plan their days off 6 months in advance. But I have seen time and time again situation where people wake up in December and say, "Oh my God, I have so many days off to take."
Yes.
And then kind of complain that December, especially with this new system, the risk is, of course, that in December they don't get a very high salary, especially if you don't have a 13th month. So yeah, I mean, I think this is the first year that we put this in place. So we have to see how this works. Also with your social secretariat, how is this going to work in practice? I would be very interested if you anyone has this situation already, to see how this works in practice with the social secretariat. If anyone has an experience to share. Of course, it's very specific, right? The person, it's a situation where somebody changed job in January, which, I mean, might not be, and not the 1st of January. So I don't know if we have that situation yet, but during the year, you will have a lot of, I think we will get more and more of those situations where people are changing jobs and they will be under this system. Okay. Yosras, other question?
Yeah, we have a question from Paula. She's asking, when calculating the 20%, what does maximum salary mean?
Which 20% are we talking about?
Slide 14, if you go to the next slide, I think. Yes.
And can you repeat the question?
We said here that the withholding should not exceed 20% of the maximum salary. What do you mean by maximum salary?
It's the December salary. So you take your normal December salary, and if there is a correction to be made, it cannot be more than 20% of this December salary.
Paula, does that answer your question?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, all right. I think we all have to go through one example in your organization, and then of course you will see how it goes. And it's just that people, because it's so new, people has not had the chance to practice this. So okay, next question.
Our next question comes from Valentina.
Yeah.
She says, if an employee leaves an organization in April and take all his or her entitled 20 legal days by the last working day, does it mean that he or she cannot have any more holidays, right, with the next employer until the end of the year?
Okay, so what I understand from this example is a situation where somebody leaves at the end of April, has not taken any days off from January to April. That is a reflection of how much this person has worked the previous year. It doesn't, and then he changed and he worked for another organization, for example, on the 1st of May. Of course, the person is entitled to the. Let's say that this person has worked the full year before and is full time. So when he leaves at the end of April, he gets paid the equivalent of 20 days off that he has not taken. Yeah? And when he starts working in the 1st of May, he is entitled to those 20 days off, but he cannot be paid those days off because he has already been paid by his previous employer. So it's not a question of whether or not he or she can take the days off. it's an obligation. It's a right, right? He has the right to take his 20 days off if he works the year before. Yeah. But he cannot be paid twice. So this is what we just discussed. It's not a question of whether he can take days off. It's a question of whether he can be paid again for the days off he has already been paid by his previous employer.
I think Valentina has some precision to provide. Valentina, please.
Yeah, no, just hi, hello everyone. Thank you. And no, it's just yes. I asked if the person lives in April, but he decided to take all of the 20 days before his last day. So
okay.
He will go away with all.
Okay, see, it's the other way around, right?
Zero, yeah. He will take everything before leaving the organization.
Yeah, he doesn't have any days off in his next employer. He already has taken all his days off. But I mean, in practice, what is happening is that most people take their days off in July and August. Yeah. In practice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what you are describing is very unlikely. Yeah? That people will just
asked because it just happened, and I have
seriously
question. So I have an employee who's living, and he told me I'm gonna take all my 20 legal days before my last day. And then he asked, what will happen next? And I said, oh, I'll let you know as soon as I get it clarified.
I mean, I think you have to tell him the consequence of what he's suggesting. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. That's why
you have to tell him, okay, you can take your 20 days off that you accrued from the previous year, but then you have no days off, paid days off until the end of the year, even with your next contract. No, I mean, he can negotiate to have, for example, it is possible that he negotiate to have unpaid leave in his next job or something like this. Yes. But this is not up to. This is not. It's not your business, right?
Yes, of course.
But I think it's very important to be clear about the consequence. I have a lot of examples of situation of people thinking that they are very clever with this and trying to have both ways and stuff like this. It doesn't work. Ultimately, you end up with no holidays, for example, for this guy. Yeah, is he gonna have no holidays in July and August? I mean, that might not be the best way to go, but I mean, this is also his personal decision. But he needs to know what is.
Yeah, indeed. That's why. Yeah, thank you very much for clarifying. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Yosra, were there other questions?
I have a few more questions, and there is Lisa who would like to ask a question directly. Go ahead, Lisa.
This is Lisa speaking.
Yeah.
Question is a bit similar to the previous one from Valentina.
Okay.
I'm wondering if someone has been working full-time in the previous year and then they change employees in February, maybe they will be entitled to those 20 days of holiday, but they haven't used them. Maybe they are not planning to enroll in another company. They want to study or they want to take a sabbatical year. What will happen with those 20 years? If you could elaborate on that. Thank you very much.
Okay, so again, for example, if he leaves at the end of January, this is why there is no relationship between the two employers. It's for those kind of situations where the person is not actually looking for another job, he wants to take a year off or something like this, right? It's not a problem because he got paid those days off at the end of January. It's the previous employer paid for those days off, even though he didn't take them, right? So if he decides to go to university, anyway, he can't really take days off is not really applicable in this case because he's not really working, right? But it's not a big deal because he was paid off those days off. Yeah, he didn't take them, but he was paid for them. So I don't know if it answers a bit your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So I think the actual system at the moment in Belgium fixed this kind of situation, but you have to explain it to him, right? You have to tell him the extra money you are receiving at the end of January is just for all the days off you didn't take, and we have to pay it off. So here it is. You also have this situation if somebody is going on to go on retirement, right? If the person who is going to retire is not taking all his days off, but of course he's going to be paid out because he cannot really take days off when he's on retirement. So yeah, another example of those situations. Yeah. Okay, maybe next question.
So I have a question from Angelica.
Okay.
She's asking when an employee can take European holidays. Is this in a situation where there is no double pay?
So it's a big discussion. Maybe we should have this at the next call, but you cannot take, before you can take European holidays, you have to have worked for the employer for 3 months. So you can start taking days off on the 4th month based on the 3 months you have already worked. Okay. So it's a bit similar to the general situation, but instead of being on a month on a yearly basis, it's every 3 months. Yeah. So after 3 months, you can take what you have accrued for the first 3 months. So somebody that starts, for example, in November, it doesn't make any sense to do European holidays because he's not entitled to days off anyway in November and December. He's only entitled to his days off after 3 months. Yeah. But I mean, European holidays, if it's a topic that people want to discuss, then we have a separate discussion about this, I think. Okay, next.
I have a question from Raphael.
Okay.
I will need him to
explain.
To explain, but it seems to be about a question we already discussed. He's saying, what about the 4 months worked in from January to April with the new employer? Raphael, would you like to explain?
Do we still have Raphael on the call? I mean, it's been an hour now, huh? So.
Yes. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello? Sorry, I couldn't open my micro. No, I think I'm clear now since you're thinking about the different response. I have my answer, but I have another one. Is this, you said that from this year there is a change, and that now when an employee who has moved is taking some vacation, we will deduct 90% of the salary for each day taken.
Yeah.
But I'm just a little bit surprised because we had somebody that has arrived in June last year, and I have seen that in July he has taken some days off, and we already
but that's
had
last year.
Yes, it was last year, and it was already a deduction for when the employee has taken days off. The payroll company has deducted
in the same month.
Yes.
You were talking about July, right?
Yes, July. So the employee arrived in June, and in July he has taken days off that were he has bought from a previous employer.
Yeah. So the issue with July is that it's after May and June.
Okay.
So they cannot make the corrections in May and June because it's already passed. Yeah. Okay. So in those situations, it is possible that what they were supposed to be doing, which so in the old system, you would reduce the double holiday pay, which is paid in May. But if the person is moving after this option is available, then this option is no longer available, and then they just deduct on whichever month they want to deduct. But this is I understand what happened, but it's not really linked with this.
Ah, okay. It was different. I thought it was.
They want, if the person, so you said that the person started in June, right?
Yes.
If the person has started, the same person started in March, they would have done it on the double holiday pay.
Yeah? You mean if he would have been paid
there
during
is no
the
longer
vacation?
any double holiday pay to be paid on that year, then they have to do. I mean, sometimes they do it in December. I personally prefer when they do it like they did, which is like nearly the month the person started, right? But again, you have to be aware of this. I think it's better with that the Secretariat Social tells you that they are doing it, because then you can tell your staff. Because again, for the guy in July, he's gonna have he got a salary that was lower than what potentially was expected, right? If they do it without telling you that they are doing it, it's difficult to warn them and tell them, okay, what is going to happen is that in July you will have a smaller salary, and then they can plan for it, right? So the system is changing as we discussed in 2024. So this situation will never happen in the future, right? But I think it's important to make sure again that they understand that the payout they got when they left their previous employer is not really something that they should spend. It's just it's just gonna mean that they're gonna get less money down the road. Yeah. And again, some people don't get this because no one told them anything, and then they get upset because they don't get their double holiday pay, or they get a lower salary in July, and so I think the new system will simplify a bit this situation. It will avoid big differences in salaries. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, if there is a difference, it's going to be in December, and there is a limit to the differences you can make in December, as we discussed, the 20%. So it's every single month will be a bit lower, but they will get more or less the same salary all the time. Yeah. This is a bit of the how I see this being applied, I think. Okay.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Yosra?
We have no more question, I think.
Okay, I mean,
add anything or ask any question, please go ahead.
Anyone raising their hands? Okay. If you have any more questions, feel free to contact us. I mean, normally we were in touch with you via email anyway, so you have our emails. There will be another one in two weeks. We will see who suggested what in the chat. Angelica is suggesting to have a session on external days off. Extra legal days off, sorry. Yeah. We will see a bit the topics that shows up and which one are the most requested. And we will let you know what will be the topic for next time. Okay. Apparently timesheets is very popular, so probably that one. All right, so I wish you a great weekend, and let's keep in touch. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.